Hi, welcome back to the All Things Homeopathy Materia Medica Series. I'm Dr. Larry Malerba, and today I'll be talking about Nux vomica, which is a homeopathic remedy made from the poisonous seeds of the fruit of the strychnine tree. Now, it's important to understand that a commonly prescribed polycrust like Nux vomica can be used constitutionally, or it can be used to treat acute ailments. Some individuals have many symptoms, physical characteristics, and temperamental traits that match the general profile of Nux vomica. It fits their overall constitutional makeup. On the other hand, Nux can also be used to treat acute conditions in other people who may not necessarily match the constitutional profile of Nux. Much of what I'll be describing is the constitutional picture of Nux vomica. The bottom line is that many remedies can be used to treat both acute ailments and chronic constitutional problems. Okay, so let's get started.
Okay, in terms of mentals, Nux vomica has a reputation for fitting the stereotypical type A personality. He is driven and ambitious. He's achievement-oriented and success-oriented. He loves to work and he lives to work. He often insists that he thrives on stress. Nux can be compulsive about his job, often to the point of workaholism. Some will admit this, others will write it off as just a normal aspect of their lives. Nux types tend to be intense, fiery, and even zealous. He has a strong take-charge presence. Most Nux types are very confident, often to the point of fearlessness. If asked, he will rate his self-confidence as a 10 out of 10, or even an 11 out of 10. I've found that Nux types tend to be rather easy to interview because they're direct, concise, and to the point. They don't wander off topic because they know that I need answers to my questions, and they're there to provide those answers in an articulate, orderly, and precise manner. Nux is goal-oriented and accomplishment-oriented. His purpose is to complete the tasks that he sets out before him. He may make lists of the things he wishes to accomplish. Nux knows what he wants, and nothing can stop him. Sometimes he's motivated by the desire for wealth or power, but most of the time he simply wants to achieve his goals. He can be very competitive, both in work and at play. Many Nux types are competitive athletes. On the other hand, some will downplay their competitive nature. He will frame it as a tendency to be competitive with himself, in the sense that he's always looking to improve upon his previous performance. He may seek achievement in terms of learning, personal growth, and self-improvement. In my experience, the willpower of Nux is very strong. Once he sets his mind to something, he does it without hesitation and without wavering. He can quit drinking alcohol or coffee or even quit smoking, just like that, with little difficulty. Now, there's a tendency to associate all of these type A behaviors with men. And in this sense, Nux is hyper-masculine. It's the most masculine of all remedies. And yet I've seen plenty of women who have benefited from Nux. The bottom line is that masculine and feminine qualities are not exclusive to either sex. Many women have masculine traits and many men have feminine traits. So don't fall for any stereotype that claims that Nux is for men and not for women. Many Nux types own their own businesses. They're born leaders. They make good bosses and good managers. They're fair-minded and usually treat their workers well. Nux exudes confidence and competence. He is fastidious and perfectionistic and won't rest until the job is completed. Although he has a strong belief in his own abilities, he's usually not overtly arrogant about it. He believes that he knows the best way to accomplish something, and this is often true. Nevertheless, he knows how to delegate responsibility, and that's because he's all about efficiency. Efficiency means achieving maximum productivity with minimum wasted effort. He wants the job done well, and he wants it done in a timely manner, and that often requires teamwork. He won't tolerate anyone who's intentionally slacking off, or workers who are not pulling their weight, or anyone who's trying to cut corners. He won't hesitate to let them know that if they don't shape up, they'll be fired. Many entrepreneurs are successful precisely because they possess these Nux-like qualities. Now, problems can begin to develop when Nux pushes too hard. As he takes on more and more responsibilities, the stress and strain begins to build. As the stress grows, he becomes irritable and impatient. He drinks coffee to push himself in order to keep up the pace, and he drinks alcohol at the end of a hard day in order to unwind. He wants to enjoy the fruits of his labor and may choose to indulge himself with the finer things in life. He eats rich food and eats too much and parties too hard. The old homeopathic books refer to this Nux tendency to overindulge as debauchery. As things get worse, he becomes nervous, irritable, excitable, and even aggressive. He becomes angry if his plans are questioned or if he is contradicted. At its worst, his anger may boil over into rage. There is a palpable sense of urgency to everything that Nux does. In fact, we can say that urgency is a theme that runs throughout much of the Nux vomica pathology. The definition of the word urgency can be summed up as follows: a sense that there is something important that requires immediate attention or action. Sounds very Nux-like, right? As we shall see, in the case of Nux, this feeling of urgency applies to both his mental state and his physical symptomatology. Now, when Nux finally reaches his limit, he begins to break down and burn out from all the stress and strain. He becomes easily fatigued from having pushed himself so hard. A similar state of irritability, frustration, and burnout may also be triggered if he's prevented from fulfilling his ambitions. To Nux, there's nothing worse than being thwarted from achieving his goals. Nux is a top remedy listed in the repertory under the rubrics ambitious and ailments from deceived ambition. Deceived ambition refers to when one is unable to achieve one's goals or dreams. Now, it starts to make sense when we think about the main fears of Nux. First, it's worth repeating that most Nux types are virtually fearless. But when there are fears, they usually revolve around his goals and ambitions. He may fear failure, especially the failure of his business, and he can fear misfortune, which often translates into fear of poverty. Given his fiery temperament, he may fear his own anger. Nux lists in repertories under fear of killing and fear of killing with a knife. Okay, so that's a quick snapshot of the Nux psychological profile. Now let's talk about the generals and particulars. Generally speaking, Nux types tend to be lean and muscular, often with an athletic build. Although Nux is notoriously chilly, this is not always so obvious. It may become more apparent during acute illnesses, when he can be extremely chilly. But as a general rule, Nux is chilly and doesn't like cold. He dislikes cold air, and he especially doesn't like cold, windy conditions. Here are some rubrics that describe how cold Nux can get during acute ailments. Chill from turning over in bed. Chill on putting the hand out from the bed. Chilliness aggravated from the slightest movement of the bedclothes. Conversely, Nux prefers warmth and feels better from warmth. He even prefers warm food and warm drinks. In terms of specific food preferences, Nux loves rich, flavorful foods. Many sources describe this as a desire for fatty and for spicy foods. In my experience, Nux prefers rich, calorie-dense foods like Alfredo sauce or chicken parmigiana, rather than actual fat like the fat on a steak. Similarly, he's not so interested in hot, spicy foods as much as he prefers tasty foods that are full of flavor. Flavor is more important to him than heat. Nux also enjoys alcoholic drinks of all kinds. And that brings us to the famous Nux relationship to coffee. I've seen a wide spectrum of responses to coffee. On the one hand, he loves coffee or uses coffee to drive himself. Sometimes he can't live without coffee or drinks large quantities of coffee. He may use coffee like a drug because it ameliorates his symptoms. On the other hand, he can be aggravated by coffee. He may be unable to sleep if he drinks coffee or may get indigestion from coffee. There may even be an aversion to coffee. The bottom line is that when we see any strong connection to coffee, we must consider Nux. This can sometimes pose a problem because coffee can act as an antidote, especially to the remedy Nux. And Nux is usually not thrilled about giving up coffee. In order to emphasize my point, I've resorted to telling my patients that coffee is the kryptonite of homeopathy. As such, it can be a waste of their time and money if they insist on drinking coffee during their homeopathic treatment. Nux is generally sensitive to a variety of things that he consumes. He can be aggravated from coffee, aggravated by alcohol, aggravated from cold drinks and cold foods. He tends to develop health problems from overeating, overindulging, or general high living. He may be similarly sensitive to over-the-counter drugs, prescription drugs, and even recreational drugs. In terms of time and sleep patterns, Nux tends to be an early riser. He's up in the morning, and after a cup of coffee, he's ready to get down to business. However, when he's not feeling so well, he often feels worse in the morning. When he's stressed or has overindulged the night before, he may wake too early, feeling irritable and unrefreshed. If he has insomnia, he tends to wake around 3 or 4 a.m., unable to fall back asleep. Lack of sleep can then become part of the vicious cycle of stress. Conversely, since Nux is always pushing the limits, rest can go a long way to helping him feel better. Okay, so Nux vomica has a particular affinity for the digestive system, the musculoskeletal system, and the nervous system. This means that these are often the weakest links where many of Nux's problems tend to manifest. In terms of digestive problems, Nux is famous for its tendency toward nausea, indigestion, and cramping. When we see any gastrointestinal problem that involves a combination of these symptoms, we must consider Nux. We've already seen how Nux tends to self-medicate with food, drugs, alcohol, and coffee. This tendency predisposes him to a variety of GI problems, including heartburn, gastritis, reflux, gastric ulcers, retching, vomiting, gallbladder problems, liver problems, hepatitis, food poisoning, and gastroenteritis. When we see any of these conditions in a chilly, irritable person who complains of nausea and or cramping associated with poor digestion of food, we think of Nux vomica. Another little clue that points to Nux is a tendency to feel sleepy after eating a big meal at dinner time. At the other end of the digestive tract, Nux is well known for its tendency to struggle with constipation, but it's a specific type of constipation, one related to the idea of urgency that I previously described. Nux can have a strong urge to have a bowel movement, but then struggles and strains to pass stool. The homeopathic books refer to this as ineffectual urging. It may also be called tenesmus, especially when the ineffectual urging is so strong that it is painful. For Nux, the same painful, ineffective urging can apply to the urinary tract, accompanied by difficulty in passing urine. In all cases, the theme or essence is the same. When the urgency to complete a job, or to complete a bowel movement, or to finish urinating is thwarted, it becomes a great source of pain and distress for the Nux type individual. Before I move on to the next topic, I feel compelled to say something about the popular use of Nux for hangovers. This is really just a marketing gimmick, and it's just plain bad homeopathy. No remedy should be used like it's an over-the-counter drug that can be taken repeatedly without consequence. Nux is not a substitute for Tums or Tylenol. Homeopathy is not meant to be just another aspect of our pill-popping culture. If a person feels the need to take Nux for a hangover, then it better be a pretty bad hangover. And if that's the case, then it's worth examining one's relationship to alcohol. Okay, now I'll get down off my soapbox and back to Materia Medica. In terms of musculoskeletal problems, Nux can exhibit a wide spectrum of muscle cramps, intestinal cramps, back spasms, rectal spasms, bladder spasms, asthmatic spasms, and so on. If it's a cramp or a spasm, then Nux could be the remedy. Nux also has muscle tension, muscle twitching, muscle stiffness, muscle jerking, and even convulsions. More specifically, Nux has a tendency to develop lumbar pain that is worse, especially on trying to turn in bed. He may have to sit up in bed in order to turn. Nux is also indicated for umbilical hernias, left-sided inguinal hernia, and strangulated hernias. We've already touched upon some of Nux's nervous system problems. He can have sleep difficulties, especially in the early hours of the morning, and his system can be very sensitive to caffeine, to alcohol, and to both prescription and recreational drugs. Nux is the one most useful remedy in any detox or rehab situation. It can be of value in all stages of abuse, addiction, after overdose, during withdrawal, and during recovery from a variety of substances, including alcohol, drugs, and even cigarettes. The Nux nervous system is also notoriously sensitive to all sorts of stimuli, including noise, light, and odors. And finally, Nux can be very helpful in acute illnesses, even if the person does not fit the constitutional profile of the remedy. In any acute illness that involves great chilliness, a desire for warmth, nausea, cramps, spasms, and/or irritability, we must consider Nux. This can commonly occur in flu, urinary tract infections, and GI bugs. Now let's finish up with remedy relationships. In my experience, Nux can be complementary to sepia, sulfur, and natrum mur. Remedies that should be compared to Nux include Ignatia, which is very similar because, as you will recall, it too contains strychnine. One important difference is that Ignatia tends to be more emotionally volatile. Hepar sulf, like Nux, is similarly very chilly and very irritable. Aurum is similar because it can also fit the profile of the driven, ambitious workaholic. And lastly, sepia can fit women who have strong masculine traits and may therefore appear similar to Nux. Well, that's it for Nux vomica. Thanks for watching. I hope these videos enhance your understanding of homeopathic medicine. Be sure to subscribe, and I hope you'll tune in again to the next episode of All Things Homeopathy. May the vital force be with you.